What's up, Who Dat Nation and God's people everywhere? Welcome to another Saints After Sunday here with a Thursday night football review edition. It's your very own Will Cottrey, of course. Good to see you guys again. As you can see, my uncle blessed my life with this haircut. I know I said I promised I was going to get it right, and it turns out early this week, on Tuesday I did, he really came through for me, and I'm really thankful. I wanted to get all this trimmed up, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, I'm thrilled about that, looking good live on camera. But before I get into the game, I want to talk about my switch to the YouTube platform. As some of you guys may know already, I was originally on, the Facebook Live deal. Just going on my Facebook and just uploading some things about the previous games for the Saints this season. Tried it out and I really enjoyed Facebook Live. But, as I went on, I thought about my Twitter followers as well. And I thought about people on my Snapchat and, Instagram and my other social media platforms. So what I really wanted to do was just use a platform such as YouTube to really merge everybody together. And, I felt like that was the way to go. So instead of using, Facebook Live or using Periscope, which I also have, because that's exclusively from they're owned by Twitter. So I wanted to use just a mutual platform for everybody to see my content whenever they so please. So, this is my first video on YouTube. It's going to mark the first video I upload on YouTube. So I'm really humbled and excited about where I'm going to go moving forward with this platform. I feel that, after much time and consideration and much deep thought, I really feel like this is going to be a right move. I'm really excited and hope you guys are really excited as well. I really appreciate my followers and my subscribers, future subscribers and supporters. So, you guys are going to be huge for my growth as not only a journalist, but just an analyst and a writer of the game of football and just sports in general. Now, review of the matchup with our arch rivals, the Carolina Panthers. Biggest thing I said on my notes, deja vu. Once again, 500 subpar, 500 territory, and poor special teams ghosts have continued to haunt the Saints this season as in years past. Their comeback bid fell short in Charlotte on Thursday night, 23-20, losing the matchup and falling to 4-6 of the 2016 campaign in the process. As the loss and the defeat made the Saints go down 1-4 in the last 5 meetings in Carolina. Even more so important in terms as it relates to this season, the playoff chances for New Orleans are continuing just to decrease rapidly based on their play. And it just hasn't been consistent. My dad and I were discussing the game yesterday, talking about the lack of complementary football, because throughout the Sean Payton era, especially in the years that we've had our struggles, we would get on the stretch where one side of the ball, specifically the offense, would do well for a stretch, and then defense wouldn't carry their load. And then other stretches, defense will actually play pretty solid, but the offense can't get into the end zone like they should, especially the way the history is shown in this in the last decade. So just the lack of complementary football and the lack of consistency that I've said in the past. I know I said in a video I made off record last week, a lot of people make the argument that the Saints are battle tested the way they've been in these close games. Drew Brees would have to come down and make a quick drive, just when time is against him. But I feel like the idea of just being battle tested is sometimes overrated, because you could be a 0-16 team and lose by an average of 3 points in each of those games. Yes, you were in those games, you're close, but you lost. Obviously, historically, there's only one team that's gone to 0-16. That's the 2008 Detroit Lions. Obviously, all those games weren't that close, but my point is that, at the end of the day, you have to win games. And one thing I say to my peers quite often is that, when you lose games, there's some things that you just clearly didn't do right. And I know a lot of times you look at, especially last week in Denver, the debacle of the officiating, but nonetheless, did the Saints really have to put themselves in that situation where you have to make 2 critical turnovers with Michael Thomas and critical times of the game to get Denver back in scoring position? And the answer is no. Even the early turnovers from Drew Brees in that game could easily be avoided. So, fans and critics can do the blame game and point fingers, but nonetheless, the Saints have to do a better job in closing games. The main thing I tweeted after the game is that the Saints have suffered 2 losses in 4 days by a grand total of 5 points. Do the math. Growing up, I was never a math person except in high school, but nonetheless, I feel like the numbers, it speaks for itself. Stats speak for themselves. They don't lie. So it's once again it's a very disheartening loss for the Who-Dats out there, because when you're trying to make a push into the playoffs in a very tight NFC conference, you can't have these mishaps and these miscues, because the margin of error is so minuscule and it's so small. And so it's really important for them just to really buckle down, because the Saints are now in a position that they really basically have to win out just to go 10-6. So, and not to mention have other factors play in their favor. So I always said in the past as well, you can't. I never like to rely on other teams to handle our business, because in the past, when the Saints have been successful in their better years, like the 2009 season, the 2006 season, 2011, and the 2013 season, they won the month of September. Obviously, the years that we've struggled, we didn't come out the gates blazing and on fire, clicking on all cylinders. And once again, based on what this past has shown us, the Saints might miss the playoffs once again. So it's going to be unfortunate if we can't get it turned around. Just to go into the stats real quick, we have Drew Brees with 35 out of 44 for 285 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 pick. So he has 5 TDs and 3 interceptions in the last 2 games, which is really modest for a guy of his caliber. So he could definitely do better in that regard, including the ill-advised turnover that he had earlier on. Tim Hightower had 12 carries for 69 yards, along with Mark Ingram with 7 carries for 28 yards. Tim Hightower also had 8 catches for another 57 yards. Granted, a lot of those were checkdowns, but he was reliable and he was ready to be available when Drew Brees needed him, especially with the coverages Carolina was giving the Saints during the game on Thursday night. So I basically had him as the big player of the game, just with his versatility, just his reliability, all in that one package. Michael Thomas, 5 catches on 5 targets for 68 yards. Not like a game busters type game, but it was good to see him really be consistent, be reliable when called upon, especially with the debacle of his game that he had. It's really just a really tough stretch for him last week, but it's really good to see him rebound just to this degree. And Brandon Cooks had another 7 catches, 42 yards. Like I said, it's not, obviously this wasn't the most impressive offensive display in the Drew Brees and Sean Payton era, but nonetheless, they did a great job with a valiant effort in the fourth quarter. But obviously, like I said, the comeback bid was just far too little, far too late. So going to the takeaways of the game, first and foremost, special teams is not so special at all. It's been a second week in a row where the Saints had allowed a blocked field goal to go for a score. What I mean is obviously what you saw on Thursday with Luke Kuechly return a block kick for a score, just revving up that Carolina Panthers fans in Bank of America Stadium on Thursday. That's not what you want to have. Now, granted, it didn't count because of a blocking back penalty, but nonetheless, we've seen this just 4 days prior in our own building with the Denver Broncos that really iced the game and sealed our fate for that Sunday matchup. And really, if you really count them all down, this is the third time all season that this blocked field goal instance has occurred. First one was back in the New York Giants game, which we could have had 3 points, but New York returned it for a 7-point touchdown. So really just a 10-point swing right there. That's something that was devastating. And really because of that low-scoring nature of the game, that really sealed the deal for us on that one in a negative manner, of course. Also, you look at Marcus Murphy's mishandle of the kickoff return and stepping out of bounds inside the 5-yard line, if I remember correctly. Obviously a bonehead decision. I don't know if the coaches told him to really return it regardless of where it was landing, but that was easily avoidable because the ball was going to go out of bounds anyway, so it really set up Drew Brees and company in a very poor and disadvantageous situation, which really could have been avoided altogether. It really brings me back to an earlier time that happened. I think it was the Kansas City game, where literally the same exact instance occurred. A mishandle of the kick, and taking it inside the 20, where it could have been further down the field had it gone out of bounds like it should have. Now, it was interesting that Will Lutz, the kicker, that it was all on the players that the special teams have been struggling. But I feel like if you see all these mishaps becoming so frequent over the course of a 16-game regular season, you have to look at the coaching staff, and I feel like special teams coordinator Greg McMahon really has to be reevaluated, especially in this extended break, because it's just, at some point, it's just really inexcusable. This is a guy who's been on the Saints coaching staff since the inception of the Brees Payton era, so since 2006, and really been the official special teams coordinator since 2008. So roughly about an 8 or 9 year period, you would think that they've had these situations all intact, especially with all the practice they've had in that time frame. Now, granted, I totally understand that we've had numerous and vast numbers of kicking inconsistencies with the New Orleans Saints. I think it was a graphic last year. We had 11 kickers in 11 years, so that ranges from John Carney, Garrett Hartley, Orlando Mari, and Kai Forbath, and just names like that just really didn't have any continuity at that position. Even though Garrett Hartley made big kicks for us early in his career and his tenure with the Saints, his career just after that opening night versus Minnesota, as we were repeating as champions in 2010, he missed 2 field goals that could have put the Saints up more in that game. So ever since then, I felt like he was on the downside. Ultimately, he got cut from the team. Fast forward to the present day, despite all the inconsistency that we had in field goal kicking, what we've seen in this season has really just been by far the worst. And it's been unacceptable and inexcusable, and you really can't have that. So, and I'm not one to call for somebody's job, because I know these guys have families and they make a living, they love what they do, but maybe you have to look at Coach Greg and the special teams. You may have to really look at him and say, can we move forward with this mediocrity and this lack of execution? Can we really move forward with what we're seeing and what we're doing? And I think the answer is no. I wouldn't be surprised if he, stays to the season, but then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make it to next Sunday. So that's a storyline that we'll definitely have to keep an eye on. So just going to the next thing, the poor offense through 3 quarters. Obviously, I won't say this is an aberration, because the Saints have the tendency to have bad games of offense despite their numbers being top 5 every year except 1 year in the last 11 years. Number 1, 5 of those instances. Drew Brees' giveaways from the sack fumble. Technically, that wasn't his fault because of lack of protection. The Saints gave up 3 sacks in the game. And of course, that ill-advised throw. I don't know what happened. The ball slipped out or just didn't see the defensive back on the play. Just nonetheless, that's another throw that could have been avoided as well. Next thing, the pass catchers really didn't make the crucial and critical play that you needed. The Fleener red zone drop, where it could have gave us on 3rd down, it could have gave us the 1st down in the red zone, but nonetheless had to settle for a field goal try. And Brandon Coleman is more so than anything. Brandon Coleman, deep pass drop late in the 4th. Granted, he did have the touchdown, which really brought the game closer, but nonetheless, when you're in these tight situations, you have to make some tough catches, and he can be relied upon to do that. Another unfortunate mishap. And third one, maybe this might be a little far-fetched, but maybe Carolina may be back. Especially with the way they played their defense against one of the elite offensive units in the game in New Orleans Saints. They played far much better than what they did with the Saints the first go around in the Superdome. Secondary was great throughout. Bradbury, Kirk Coleman, of course, who was my Pro Bowl snub on Last Word on Sports. On my Pro Bowl snubs list, it's an annual series that I do for the website. And I think he had 7 or 8 interceptions last year. And out of the 10 Pro Bowlers that the Carolinas boasted during their 15-1 campaign in 2015, he didn't make the Pro Bowl. So I was really disappointed that was the case, because I feel like he was far more than worthy of that selection. But nonetheless, he's still a great player regardless of a Pro Bowl bid or not. So he had a huge interception in the game off Drew Brees. Now, granted, Luke Kuechly's loss is tremendous. I don't know if you guys saw the way he responded, just the way it shook the whole crowd. Really, Chris Collinsworth saying, he was really in disbelief as well. I was as well, just to see him in tears, see a guy give it his all, but just to have such a vulnerable moment on national television, that was really telling and it was a really intense moment. Luke Kuechly is my favorite defensive player in the league. Just really seeing him as a Saints fan, really admiring that greatness every week, especially so young in his career. Already have several Pro Bowl appearances to his resume, and of course the 2013 Defensive Player of the Year honor, and a Super Bowl appearance. The guy is just nothing short of exceptional and sensational. But I just hope he comes back better than ever and stronger than ever. But at least they have Thomas Davis in the fold nonetheless, who's also a Pro Bowler. When healthy, he's just an elite as Luke Kuechly is. So it's going to be interesting to see where they are. So if they can get more consistency out of their offense, it will really only help the cause, because if looking at the stats, the Saints both outpassed and outran the Panthers, and also they have more time in possession. So, like I said, going back to the turnovers, turnovers kills, and they're game changers and game killers for the losers. A lot of Saints fans were looking at the idea, especially Chris Collinsworth during the broadcast last night. They say, they know a lot of people didn't understand why that the Saints didn't blitz Cam Newton on that 3rd down completion to Kelvin Benjamin that would really ice the game for him. I honestly supported the decision not to blitz and just play soft in coverage. It brings me back to just last week in the Denver game when the Saints pass rush was teeing off against Trevor Siemian. When you have a guy like that who's really a talented young man, but nonetheless not the most physically imposing and physically gifted, it's easier to have those matchups against him to blitz at will. The only issue I had with what they did was that in blitzing Simeon, they gave too much space for the receivers to make plays in space. So, and that's more of a secondaries issue. I don't know if they were afraid of their speed. They didn't want to give a big play, but nonetheless, you have to really play tighter, stiffer defense against those looks on third down, because that was a huge problem the Saints last week. They just couldn't get off the field on third down. But fast forward back to Thursday, when you're playing against Cam Newton, his mobility is really a threat on any and every play. So I feel like the Saints coverage was really solid, but playing against Kelvin Benjamin, this is 6'5", 6'6" freak. This is almost unguardable. I wish they would have got into the passing lane, or maybe got an extra bit of pressure from the actual D-line itself, not any extra guys. Like I said, I'm not really griping about the actual play call, and like I might catch some flack for that, but nonetheless, I feel like it was a solid call. It just didn't go their way, which was unfortunate indeed, especially in that time, in that crucial moment in the stage. But just a learning process, so I have to really look forward from there. And speaking of looking forward, I just want to look ahead to the Los Angeles Rams. Football is back in Los Angeles, California, for the first time since 1994. So I want to look at the Rams statistics real fast. Offensively, they're one of the poorest units in the league, arguably the poorest unit. They're ranked dead last in points per game, only averaging about maybe like 18 a game or something of that nature. I think they're averaging 15.4 points per game on offense, and only 31st, second to last in yards per game, which is about 308. So the bottom feeder and offensive unit, as they've been in like the last several years, just the quarterback position is what they really lack right now. Now, what's going to be interesting is to see how Jared Goff does. I think by that time it'll be his second career start, because I think he's starting for the first time in his NFL career this coming Sunday. So really just to see the film on him, really eager to see what we can get out, and really study on throughout the week. Now, in terms of defenses, St. Louis is one of the league's best. They're 10th in scoring defense, only allowing an average of 19.2 points per game, while only allowing 327 yards per contest, which is good for 7th place out of 32 teams, which is really solid. So it's a lot of that thanks to their defensive line. Of course, has been one of the league's best units the last 5 to 7 years. There's a little quick history about the matchup. Saints are 2-3 versus the Rams, the St. Louis and Los Angeles Rams in the Sean Payton era, and they lost 2 straight. Both were on the road at the Rams, and this is the first time, obviously, like I said, first time the Saints are playing the Rams as the LA Rams since 1994. So the matchup to watch, I'm really eager to see the Saints offensive line and the Los Angeles' defensive line. I'm really eager to see how the Saints offensive line responds this coming matchup. Unlike where they played against the Carolina Panthers, this is a really underwhelming performance. Could have been well worse. Nonetheless, you have to keep Drew Brees clean, because that's your best chance to win, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Because the Rams defense, like I mentioned already, Rams defense has always just manhandled the Saints offensive line in previous matchups, even when the front five were in its peak form. So even when Jari Evans was in his prime, you have Carl Nicks in the fold, Jamon Bushrod. They've always had their number against the Saints. Even when they won back in 2009, and even though we won back in 2009 in our Super Bowl season, it was a grind-out game, 28-23. Courtney Roby kickoff return really was the biggest play of the game in that afternoon in St. Louis. This is definitely not a cakewalk, because I think the Rams are still having somewhat to play for in that division, so we have to keep an eye out on them. Looking through analytics, I looked at each of the Los Angeles Rams defense live and have a Pro Football Focus analytics grade of at least 75.5. So, and of course, the headline guy is Pro Bowl defensive tackle Aaron Donald, who has a 95.3. So, guys, center Max Unger, Jari Evans, these guys are going to have a really good game against that defensive line. So that's the biggest point of the game. And they really shut down that front four, because this is all about trench warfare in this matchup. We have to set the tone on both sides of the ball at the line of scrimmage. And I think the Saints do that, they have a better chance of winning. And because they're at home, if we score points, it's going to make life more difficult for a rookie quarterback in a hostile environment as a Mercedes-Benz Superdome. So with that said, I'm going to say that the Saints win. They rebound with a win 27-10. With that said, I didn't want to keep you guys too long. I'm done for tonight. As a Saints fan, you're disgusted right now, but nonetheless, we have rallied around our team. Obviously we're not in the room, this film study rooms, and we're not in the workout rooms and stuff of that nature. But nonetheless, just to see how they respond is going to be important. This is very character testing and a really crucial time of the season. Can they respond? Chances are historically no, but never want to count your team out, especially when they have a favorable schedule against some of these opponents. Like I said, moving forward, I'm going to be transitioning to the YouTube channel platform. I feel like there's some more opportunities for me to obtain out there and gain. So I'm really excited about my growth as this analyst. So I want you guys to leave comments, concerns, questions that you may have. I'm always open to feedback and ways I can improve your experience of watching me. Follow me on my social media platforms. Make sure you also follow Last Word on Sports. That's where a lot of my content comes from anyway, my written content, should I say. I'm a football editor with the website, so make sure you guys follow that site. I've been affiliated with them for the last 3 years. Nothing short of a blessing to me. Follow us and see what we're about. With that being said, I'm Will Cottry II from Saints After Sunday. You guys have a blessed night and be well.